Hello and a very warm welcome from me, Phil, here in Sheffield, England. On my bench is an Ekco model A52 vintage radio from 1947 that recently came in for repair. Its owner has stipulated, though he wants his radio to function safely as well as being dependable, it is important that I retain as much as is possible what is factory. Right, let us go and see what needs to be done. Before your eyes and for your delight is an Ekco model A52 band spread as well as pre-select station super heterodyne radio. It was released onto the UK market during October 1947, costing £28 7 shillings, that is £28.35, plus purchase tax. A console version was released 14 months later, December of 1948, costing £33 13 shillings and twopence. That is £33.66 plus purchase tax. A fairly expensive radio back in the day. Its bands cover 1000 to 2000 metres on long wave, 200 to 550 metres on medium wave, and there are 3 shortwave bands. SW1 11.32 to 13.95 metres, SW2 16.2 to 20 metres, and SW3 is 24.6 to 51.7 metres. I'll turn this set round, remove its back cover, and you as well as I will see the inside rear of this radio for the first time. Look at that, made in England. We don't see that too often these days. As can be clearly seen, this cream coloured mains lead is not original. It would have been a cloth covered, rubber sheathed live and neutral type. The mains plug is the old non-sheathed live and neutral prong type. It no longer conforms to current electrical regulation. It will be replaced with a sheathed plug like this one, but it will suffice for the present. I have removed all but one of the screws holding this back cover in place. I'll now remove the one screw. And put the back cover to one side. See here, one very dusty Ekco A52 chassis, but it has to be expected. It is getting on towards 73 years old, and like me, it's not exactly a spring chicken. Normally, at this point, I would call upon my wife to vacuum clean the inside of this radio, but she, bless her, is out visiting a dear old friend of hers. Her husband died not too long ago, and she will not be back home for at least 2 hours. I'll return later when wifey has run the vacuum cleaner nozzle over this dust. My darling wife has done an excellent job cleaning the dust off this radio chassis, as she usually does. This particular radio does not belong to me. The owner has requested I replace all the defective components, the usual capacitors, out of tolerance resistors, and only do an IF and oscillator alignment if someone has been in here with a screwdriver. Otherwise, leave everything as it is. Looking round this chassis, I'd say it has never been inside a service workshop from new. You will see this as this repair progresses. Personally, I don't mind repairing radios, or repairing anything for that matter, provided it has been serviced correctly by trained service hands. What I do object to is repairing a radio that has had a repair job done to it that looks and smells like a rat's behind. If indeed one is able to imagine what a rat's behind looks and smells like. I've got respect for the person who replaced this mains lead. Yes, it's a crude job, but I imagine that person would not have professed to be a radio service tech. They did what they knew needed to be done to make this radio safe and functional for a few more years. They did their best, and what they did worked fine. At least, they did not go on to do anything else to this radio, and I thank them for that. Right. I'll put my white lab coat on and assess what needs doing to this radio. For sure, all the rubber sheathed wire will need replacing. Back shortly. Right, chaps, as can be seen, everything under this chassis, just as it is above, is original and unmolested. The rubber sheathed wires look to be in reasonable condition, but they will be replaced as a matter of course. I invite all of you connoisseurs and friends of Hunt's capacitors to feast your eyes upon these. A sight truly to behold. Knowing such capacitors are an endangered species saddens me immensely. I hope I'll live long enough to participate in holding a 2-minute silence after the last Hunt's capacitor has joined its forebears in that throng way up there in the sky. The thought brings a lump into my throat and a tear in my eye. Right, enough of that sentimental garbage. It is time to get back to this chassis. Looking at the reservoir and smoothing capacitor canister, I see it is insulated from the metal chassis, which strongly suggests there will be a potentiometer biasing arrangement somewhere in this lot. Every likelihood the EL33 audio output valve cathode will be strapped directly down to deck. Before continuing, I'll equip myself with a circuit diagram. Very important when doing electronic servicing. No sooner said than done. One circuit diagram for the Ekco model A52. Here it is printed. Confidential. This service data is for the information of Ekco appointed dealers only and must not be copied. 2 service centres where I worked were Pi Ekco dealers. Ekco merged with Pi at around 1960, so in effect those service centres had Pi dealership. From those places I was able to acquire an original of this copied Ekco service data. And here is the circuit diagram. The mains transformer, TR1, high tension winding centre tap, connects to R15, 68 ohm, and R14, 33 ohm, totaling 101 ohm potentiometer directly down to deck. The EL33 cathode is also strapped directly down to deck. Right, I'll go on to test the strength of the mains transformer on the radio chassis. OK chaps, I've extracted the AZ31 rectifier from its valve base, and using one of my analog multimeters I've inserted the probe leads into orifices 4 and 6. Voltage reading from anode to anode is pretty close on to 720 volts. Nothing out of the ordinary. The AZ31 incorporates a 4 volt directly heated cathode. Moving the test leads over to pins 2 and 8, my meter tells me there are 4 1/4 volts, which is quite acceptable. 6.3 volts for the rest of the valve heaters, as well as the 3 miniature Edison screw lamps, are working fine. There is no wax discharge from this mains transformer. I feel confident saying it is as good as the day it was secured onto this chassis. Now, off camera, I'll quickly test the continuity of the smoothing choke, the 2 IF transformers, and the aerial and oscillator coils. Once I'm through with that small task, I'll report back and reveal how it went on. The task of testing for continuity went fine. Nothing untoward. Having determined the smoothing choke, L27, is fine, I will proceed by replacing reservoir electrolytic capacitor, C52, 8 microfarad with a 10 microfarad at 400 volts VDC, as well as replacing smoothing electrolytic capacitor, C51, 16 microfarad with a 22 microfarad, also rated at 400 VDC. As I'm doing that, I'll check the strength of R15, 68 ohm, and R14, 33 ohm resistors. Once all of that has been executed, it will conclude the power supply circuit. I'll then move over to the circuit pertaining to the EL33 audio output pentode section. And here it is, chaps. this dual electrolytic capacitor canister taken out of circuit, and a replacement electrolytic capacitors fitted to a tag strip. I also fitted the 68 ohms and 33 ohms resistors, measure well within their tolerance rating. However, on this occasion I did encounter one resistor that was way beyond its tolerance rating. This 10k 1 watt carbon resistor gave a value reading of 17.2k, so I served an eviction notice upon it. I'm starting to develop an idea that this particular model might be of a second production run. I've looked all over this radio chassis for C42 50 microfarad electrolytic capacitor. I haven't found it as yet. Also, this pi topology arrangement, negative half is not strapped directly down to deck as is drawn on this circuit diagram. Instead, it is strapped directly over to this biasing arrangement. Like so. In the past I've repaired a few of these Ekco model A52 radios, and I certainly don't remember C42 being eradicated, or C40 and C45 being strapped over to R15 68 ohms. Be on the lookout at all times for changes to circuit layouts. There might not always be notification, as is the case here. Right, it's now come to that time when I check the strength of the EL33 audio output pentode circuit. Whilst working my way through the EL33 audio output circuitry, I was pleasantly surprised I didn't find any resistors that were way beyond their tolerance. It is more or less to be expected that there will be at least one, perhaps two resistors that need replacing, but not in this instance. Capacitors rated from 1 nanofarad have been replaced as standard procedure. Also, whilst I was on with doing that task, I replaced the mains lead, added a fuse holder in which there is a 1 amp fuse, and I replaced a few suspect wires. The rubber isn't perished. It's fairly decent, but nonetheless they are very dirty. They certainly look worse than what they are. I've hooked up my Philips MP3 player via two randomly chosen 0.022 capacitors, purely for DC blocking purpose, and they are connected via two crocodile leads directly to the volume control. Right, this is the Rolling Stones, The song is called Jiving Sister Fanny. I've disconnected the power to the rest of this radio. The audio output circuit is functioning quite well. Now I'll move over to the EBC33 double diode triode circuitry, where I will check resistors and replace old paper and foil capacitors. Right, I'll return once that task has been completed. A quick update on my performance. I've been almost 1 hour replacing 4 capacitors and 1 resistor on this sub-chassis. I've checked the tolerance of 7 of the resistors, and fortunately they tested well within their tolerance. I'll mention in passing, though these Sprague capacitors are well out of their use-by date, they were one of my favourite capacitors. They were manufactured in the United States of America. They were a fairly common sight inside Pi and some Ekco radios back in the day. Since those capacitors are no longer reliable, they will be replaced with newer types. Once I have replaced these 2 Sprague capacitors and checked the rest of the resistors on this sub-chassis, this radio might well be ready for a power-up. Hopefully we might get a tune out of it. Work on this sub-chassis is starting to shape up. I've done a fair amount of checking and found 1 or 2 resistors that are suspect. For example, I've replaced a defective 47K carbon composite resistor just down here. Doubtful you'll see it, but it's there. It gave a reading of 65K. Now, at a quick guesstimate, that has to be around a third or 33% above resistor band in value. These 2 1 meg resistors, just here, gave a value reading that was well within 10% tolerance, despite being of 20% tolerance. I'm happy to let those 2 resistors remain in circuit. Right, I'll do some more value checking and replace where necessary. Back in a while. This amplifier, demodulation and audio preamplifier sub-chassis has had all of its resistors checked and replacements fitted where they were way above their tolerance rating, and all of the capacitors checked and replacements fitted above 1 nanofarad rating. I've also replaced all of the rubber wires, even those connecting direct to the IF transformers. Not that they were in poor condition, I replaced them purely as a precaution. Working underneath this chassis can be rather tight in some places, so it was best that I did replace all of those rubber wires and other components, because replacing them in the future will also be difficult for the person who comes to replace what I have replaced in years to come. Okay, now I'll refit this sub-chassis onto the main radio chassis and do a general check over to see if there is anything else that might benefit from being replaced. Okay chaps, once I've tightened this screw that along with another screw at the other side, secures this sub-chassis onto the main chassis. It will be time for a power up. I'll just plug it in and switch on. Will it work? Good question. But I'm reasonably confident there is nothing untoward, or at least I hope there isn't. If nothing else, at least the dial lights are working. Oh, hang on. Oh, that's alright. Nothing else doing on the channels. Oh. It works a lot. Excuse me. It works a lot better when I insert an aerial into the back of the radio. That sounds to be shortwave.
Just because I'm too lazy to put milk in it, that's it.
Radio Caroline, 1368 AM.
Your mum's naked drawer.
I'm the doctor and you are far too handsy.
I don't know your mum.
That's Graham. That's a preset station.
Eaters are cutting back. They're having more
Another
veggie food,
preset
less meat.
station.
Liverpool, the last time we won.
Let's drink a toast. Tonight we celebrate.
And that's back onto Graham again. Yes, we have, by the sound of things, one functional Ekco Model A52 vintage radio. Well, first and foremost, though this radio is not an AC-DC type, it has a mains transformer that enables around 350 volts secondary for the high tension voltage to both anodes of the AZ31 rectifier valve, 4 volts for its heaters, and 6.3 volts for the rest of the valve heaters, as well as for the 3 dial lights. It is essential a mains isolation transformer should always be employed whenever working on any mains operated valve or solid state equipment. If you are unsure, leave such mains energized equipment until such time you become certified competent with electrical and mechanical equipment, since electricity, especially mains power, is lethal. If you have been following along and continue to do so, then you are doing so at your own risk. I'd say there is at least a 95% chance this radio has never been worked on. Everything looked original, all 5 of its valves looked to be original, and there is no rust anywhere on its chassis. I guess this radio has been stored somewhere warm and dry. The owner of this radio, it does not belong to me, though I own 3 of this particular model, requested I only do or replace that which is necessary, or, more importantly, to make it safe when occasionally powering it up to keep it sweet. I will add, I always suggest to those who purchase radios, record players, etc. from me, it is best practice to power up vintage valve equipment, such as radios, for at least 30 minutes every month. It is not a good idea to leave them sitting on a shelf for months, even years at a time, without powering them up. As most of you may well know, I never perform what was referred in the television and audio servicing trade an unauthorised modification. Since Ekco, or Ekco Limited, Southend-on-Sea, here in England, no longer exist. Ekco merged with Pi around 1960, and Pi merged with Philips of Holland around 1971. It does not mean that safety can be disregarded. On the contrary, safety is of paramount importance when making any modification, which in this instance I have added a fuse holder to this chassis, which contains a 19mm 1 amp time delay fuse. The fuse arrangement I've fitted has been positioned between the main switch on the rear of the volume potentiometer and the incoming mains lead. The reason I fitted it like that, and not how they were once fitted after the main switch, is to blow should a fault occur involving the main switch. Yes, it can happen. The owner of this radio does not want me to do an IFT and oscillator realignment. He wants it left as factory, and he is not bothered about me fitting X1, Y2 capacitors to the mains circuitry. So, there is nothing else for me to do to this radio apart from returning this chassis to its cabinet, testing it, refitting the back cover, and leaving it on soak test for 3 days before contacting him. Here is a view of the underside of the chassis via the inspection cover on the bottom of this radio's cabinet. As can be seen, there were 4 carbon composite resistors that gave a value reading way above their colour banding. They were replaced. And all paper and foil capacitors with a value over 1 nanofarad were also replaced. The rubber sheathed wire in general is in very good condition. Only a small amount of it was replaced, which will please this radio's owner no end. And here it is, one Ekco model A52 radio introduced onto the British market during 1947, performing BBC Radio 4 on the long wave band.
Some of the best parliamentarians are very, very effective select committee members, and so I think that
plenty of volume there.
The select committee. So going down initially that route to joining 5, and there's also a place called the
These are the preset stations.
कि अगर मैंने चीनी तहरीरें और गाने याद न किए तो मेरी रिहाई मुश्किल होगी.
Do you think it's because
Long wave.
To be honest, Minister, you didn't need telepathy. All you needed was a
BBC Radio 4 once again.
information.
Very many of them.
Sorry about the interference.
कहीं भी जाने के लिए पुलिस
This is medium wave. Short wave. There's nothing on the other two. Shortwave bands are not a great deal. They were earlier, but it seems to have disappeared in the last half hour.
Sir says not sure.
जा रहे हैं तो ये मालूमात आपके लिए मियां और बीवी के दरमियान जिनसी ताल्लुक कायम होने से मुख्तलिफ बीमारियों का
I've made up
शादी से कबल
a wire aerial connected to a wonder plug.
जिनसी ताल्लुक से पैदा होने वाली बीमारियों का
I'm sure its owner will be very happy. When it comes down to repairing a vintage radio, I normally like to be given carte blanche as to what I do and how I do it. I'm finding that an increasing number of vintage radio owners are stipulating what they specifically want me to do to their radio. But who am I to argue? I'm merely the humble service tech. Okay. It has now come to that time when I'm expected to make myself scarce. No doubt wifey will have a sandwich and a hot drink waiting for me. Thank you for viewing. Your time and interest is appreciated immensely. Please join me again for my next video upload. Until then, bye-bye.